Wolf Moon Magic, a wolf shifter fated mates competition romance. Full Moon Games Book 1. Written by Lindsey R. Loucks. Narrated by Courtney Connor. Chapter 1. Mom always called me a moon chaser. I always took that to mean I was a free-spirited problem child with zero direction, who'd probably end up in jail for throwing an alligator through a drive-through window. Little did I know how literal that nickname would turn out to be. It all started on a Friday in late January. It was warm outside thanks to living in America's Wang, also known as Florida. Morning lecture was canceled, hours to kill before my next class. What else was I to do but chug a bucket of coffee with caramel creamer and gape at pretty book covers? I was a grown-ass woman, and I'm not afraid to admit I was practically skipping to my favorite place in the world, Alakazam Bookstore. Frank, I greeted the middle-aged shopkeeper. Harlow. He barely looked up from the local grunge magazine that he perused with intensity. Alakazam opened at the butt crack of dawn, so chronic book sniffers like myself could saunter in any time and get lost in the sense of old leather covers, paper, and ink. The smells alone brought me back here again and again. No class today? Frank thumbed his 2-day scruff and turned the page in his magazine. Nope, not this morning. I squeezed my way through more than a few teetering stacks of books that formed a maze on the floor. Frank wasn't what you might expect to be the owner of a quirky little store like this. He dressed in black jeans and a black t-shirt, typically with his favorite band on the front of it. Today's band was Glimmerpuss, written in neon green. He had long, salt and pepper hair that was braided down his back and full sleeve tattoos. He was a member of the local motorcycle club and completely looked the part. He drank his coffee nightmare black, and I was convinced that his soul was even blacker, even if he was usually nice to me. And you thought you'd come here? Not a question, not even close. That going to be a problem, Frank? I sidestepped another pile on my way toward the back. Gotta get my fix somewhere. Only if you don't read the entire book here, like last time, he called after me. Hey, I paid for it, didn't I? Plus, if you don't want people reading here, get rid of the chairs. He knew I was right. His loud sigh echoed slightly before the high shelves swallowed me. Then I was alone in a steamy sea of swoony men, whip-smart heroines, and unique worlds I could drown myself in again and again. Also known as the romance section. Here, I would find all the love stories I couldn't seem to land in real life. I had just finished The Veil of Moonlight and Fangs, and I was in desperate need of the sequel. Honestly, though, I would gladly read any of these. However, right now, wolf shifter romance novels were my vice. Those that featured incredibly hot, powerful, domineering men were my favorite. I perused the aisle, scanning each title, knowing exactly what I was looking for. The Winter of Shadows and Prey. When my eyes landed on the title, a little gasp escaped. Yeah, there was Chesty Dominic on the cover looking so fine. I snatched the book up and flipped through the pages, the words tongue, hot kiss, and thrust popping out from page 10 onward. Yes, and no, I didn't read books just for the sex. Fine. Maybe I did. Maybe just this morning I told my enormous laundry piles, "Don't worry, no one does me either." See? That's called a valid excuse to read sex books. Romance, huh? A deep male voice said. I spun, ready to use the book like a weapon to fend off what was clearly an attacker. Instead, the book dropped from my hand and hit the floor when I came face to face with a tower of muscle. The guy stood before me in that typical, tall, dark, and handsome sort of way. Blue eyes, perfect dark hair, plush lips, shoulders to swoon over, full-sleeve tattoos, and hints of more curling up from underneath the collar of his black t-shirt. And that wasn't even considering the deep rumble of his voice, or the way he smelled like violets and sea spray during a thunderstorm. I might have been drooling. Fuck. What had I found? The god of the bookstore hiding in the back? Something tugged sharply in my chest, an explosion of sparking nerves. I like handsome books. The words were out before I could stop them. I just stood there with my mouth hanging open, trying to swallow them all back like they were eggplants. Eggplants? Fucking hell, Harlow, pull your head out of your ass. No wonder I couldn't get laid. What? He smiled in a way that no one that hot had any business smiling. I shook my head, trying to reset, but no go. With only one functioning brain cell, I did the only thing I could. I darted down to grab the book. He stopped me with one warm, overlarge hand on my shoulder. Let me get that. He flashed another perfectly crooked smile my way before he bent down and picked up my book for me. I've been dying to read this one. He met my eyes, and I almost got lost in how bright and blue they were. He had a scattering of freckles across his nose and cheeks that were more than a little intriguing. But he was lying to me. I knew a fellow book nerd when I saw one, and he was just too hot. Plus, I was pretty sure there was no such thing as a bookstore god, which was a real shame. You like these types of books? I asked him skeptically, grabbing the book and flipping halfway through. The words, I screamed his name as he slid between my folds, might as well have been blinking in neon. I looked from the words to him and back again, and nearly burst out laughing as whatever spell he had on me snapped. You have no idea. He grabbed the book back, looking down at the page. I could have sworn I saw his jaw detach a little. I think you have no idea, I shot back. I didn't know if I was flirting or teasing, but I didn't care. Time to turn the tables on whatever weird attempt to pick me up he was making here. Maybe I should have guessed that's what you liked, he said, his voice low and intoxicating. Maybe. My smile spread innocently, teeth flashing as I took the book from his hands and scanned the page. Dare you to read this part to me? I would love to, he said, taking the book back. My stomach flopped as I realized too late what I had asked him to do. Right here, in the middle of the bookstore, with a voice that was worthy of the words he was about to read. What had I done? More, he read with an arched eyebrow. God, that one word trembled my knees. More, he continued. She spoke the word in a rumble as she spread herself for him, for the width of him that was just waiting to take her, to claim her. She needed it, but he was frozen there, the tip of him teasing her opening, the width of him already pushing her wider. More, the word was a sob as she bucked toward him, begging for his rock-hard cock. I gulped loudly, staring at his fingers as they caressed the book cover, my coffee shaking in my hand. Are you screwing with me? His blue eyes flicked to mine, and I nearly dropped my coffee as he brought me back down to earth with one look. The 1-800-sex-gods voice had gone. Poor guy looked furious. Yes, of course, I laughed, grabbing the book from him and heading toward the front of the store. Pretending you're into these books is such a bad pickup line. He caught up to me easily. Who said I was trying to pick you up? The fact that you tried to pretend you read Wolf Shifter books? You're a terrible liar. I gave him one last look, my heart leaping in my chest. Too bad he wasn't a reader, because I'd start a book club with him any day. Wolf Shifter? I knew it. He quickened his steps, cutting me off right before I turned the corner that would put me in sight of Frank. He moved in closer, making me even more aware of his presence. It made the hair on the back of my neck spike up like an electric current before a thunderstorm. It was like the same reaction I had at the sound of his voice, but on steroids. I suppressed a shiver as he leaned close to my ear and asked, "What kind of wolf are you?" What did you say? I must have misheard him. Either that or he spoke in gibberish, like I do. Well, he licked his bottom lip, and damn me for memorizing every single second of it. If you were a wolf shifter, like in these books that you love so much, what wolf would you be? I guess I've always identified as a lone wolf, like from this book that I read once. He furrowed his brow. No, I mean, what kind of wolf are you? Like in real life? This was not how I'd imagined any bookstore conversation going, but here we were. You first. Big. Fast. He leaned in, confident, suave, and totally mocking me. I typically have a sandy gray coat, unless I get wet. And my scent, little rabbit, is like the sea during a rainstorm. Funny. You think because I like these books, I'm easy pickings. You're dead wrong. I waved the book in his face before I turned, ready to check out and get out of here. Again, he flashed around me before I took a step forward. Okay, what was with this guy? No, I think you're fascinating. Something about you draws me in. Oh, this guy was full of it, wasn't he? Is that right? I forced out a laugh. You don't even know me. Well, let's fix that. He leaned even closer, until those bright blue eyes were threatening to swallow me whole. What's your name, little rabbit? I have to know. I shouldn't have answered him. I had no reason to answer him. But I couldn't stop myself from opening my mouth and giving him exactly what he wanted. Harlow, Harlow Vale. Harlow, he repeated, but the word came out of his mouth wrapped in silk and drizzled with chocolate. I could have listened to him say my name over and over again. And yours? I asked, my pulse thrumming. Ames. Ames, unique like him. It sounded like a sigh, one that curled a pleasant tingle between my thighs. If you will excuse me, Ames. Saying his name felt too damn good. I need to finish my shopping so I can get to class. I mostly just needed to get away from him before I did something silly, like jump on him. This guy had no right sauntering in here, the holiest of places, and making me feel so good. I breezed past him with my book. Books. Oops, another jumped off a display at me and headed into another aisle. He didn't take the hint. Maybe you can offer me some good book recommendations, he said, following on my heels. Oh, you mean instead of Shifter Romance? I picked up one book, only to slide it back in place because of 2 sets of nipples pointing right at my face. Yes, if you could recommend something other than wolf porn, that would be great. Wolf porn? I laughed. Wolf porn? That's what it is, isn't it? He was clearly playing with me. No. Porn or erotica is just sex. These have plots, substance, depth, and dicks. Sometimes a few of them at once, but I kept that to myself. They're not all dirty books. Some are just a little sexier than others. I was right, of course, but he didn't seem to be buying what I was selling. One of his eyebrows lifted mischievously. You say that, but you like the dirty ones, don't you, Harlow? Yes. Chapter 2. I slammed my econ textbook closed and tossed it on my bed, then touched the screen of my phone to see what time it was. Almost dinner time, and Mom was making mac and cheese. Here's the deal. I'm a broke-ass college student who lives in my mom's basement. My major is undecided, and I'm considered a second-year sophomore, having already completed my sophomore classes last year. This year, I was just stalling. So that whole flinging an alligator through a drive-through window? Yeah, not so far-fetched now, huh? See, the idea of being on my own and doing the adulting thing 24/7 fucking terrified me. The longer I could put it off, the better. I had a part-time job slinging coffee with a great employee discount to help feed my coffee addiction, and pretty good pay to help feed my other addiction, books. I lovingly caressed Dominic's chest on the cover of The Winter of Shadows and Prey, careful of the bookmark placed already a quarter of the way through. My mind wandered to the god of the bookstore, Ames, and his intriguing offer to go to a private party. Did I even want to go? What would I wear? Most importantly, could I convince Mom to let me go? Her house, her rules, after all. It was a fair enough deal, though. She didn't charge me for rent or groceries, so normally I had no problem following the rules about 35% of the time. This party, though, it felt different somehow. I hopped off the bed and left my bedroom to go upstairs to the kitchen. Hey, Mom. She turned from the boiling water on the stovetop and smiled at me. She had the same long, silky hair I had, except mine was purple. But aside from that, we didn't really look much alike. Similar, but not alike. She was much prettier than I was. Hey, babe, how are classes? My mornings were canceled. The rest were unexciting. You don't have practice today? No. A shame, really, since running track was about the only thing I was actually good at. So good it helped fund college. I'd always been a fast runner, almost unnaturally so, according to my coaches. Considering I had commitment issues with coursework and college in general, and often dangled too close to the academic probation list, I could have used an afternoon doing what made me feel strong and capable. I sat down at the island while she prepared dinner. So I was thinking of going to a party tonight, I said, trying to sound casual. Whose party? She didn't look up at me as she added the macaroni to the boiling pot. A guy I met? You don't know him. Do you? She turned with a smirk on her pretty face. You're not actually considering going to some guy's home. Have you learned nothing from watching Cold Cases? Come on, Mom. Are you really going to tell me you never went to a party that you were invited to by someone you didn't know well? That's not the point. Besides, I lived in a different time. Her favorite thing to say. Like there weren't serial killers around when she was my age. I want to go. I don't think it's a good idea. It's a private party, though. Sounds too classy for danger. She rolled her eyes. Yeah, that makes sense. Don't you have an econ test on Monday? Already studied. And by that I'd meant I'd looked at the words in the textbook and my notes. Nothing else. Econ was stupid boring. I still don't think it's a good idea. I'll bring my cell and my mace. Plus, I'll threaten any guy within a 2-foot radius that I'll skin their balls to make a nice wallet for myself if they get any closer. Nope. 5-foot radius then. No, not good enough. Why? She stared at me and opened her mouth like she was going to say something and then closed it again. Mom, hello? There are dangers in the world that you don't know about. I've watched cold cases with you. I'm well aware of all the ways to die. Besides, I'm always careful. That's not what I'm talking about. She took a deep breath before letting it out slowly. When she spoke again, her voice was heavy. Look, there's something I need to tell you. Okay. I was probably adopted or something. That made sense given that Mom was so much prettier and smarter than I was. Or we were aliens in hiding who escaped from the government, or maybe my overactive imagination meant someone official would add syndrome after my name in the future. Just then my phone rang, and a reflex made me look down at it. It was one of the girls from econ class. You should probably answer it. Mom stuck her head in the fridge to hide her obvious relief. I gave her the stink eye. We'd discuss this great secret later. Hello? I answered the phone. Harlow, it's Lacey. I missed class today and wondered if you could send me the notes. Sure, I'll send you what I have. Which wasn't much because I was busy struggling to keep up with the lectures. Great, I appreciate it. No problem. I clicked off the call and turned back to my mom. You were saying? She juggled the milk, cheese, and salad fixings onto the counter, avoiding all eye contact. It's not important. Really, because it sounded important. Just then her cell rang, and she practically leapt toward the island to check it. I have to take this. We'll talk later. Just don't go out tonight, of all nights, okay? My mouth dropped open. Are you kidding me? What's that supposed to mean? She shushed me and answered. I could tell from the deepening lines on her face that it was someone from the law office, and she'd be a while. She'd mentioned some big, important trial she was helping with as a paralegal that started next week. Super convenient. I sighed, finishing up dinner where she left off. After eating alone, I went back downstairs and got ready. I might not have been tall and sexy, but I could contour the hell out of my face. By the time I was dressed in shorts and a crop top to show off my 3 tats and my leather jacket, I decided I didn't look completely unpracticed at going to parties. When it was time to go, Mom was still on the phone, so I left without telling her goodbye, though her words still echoed in my memory. Just don't go out tonight, of all nights. Chapter 3. My heart was somersaulting when I walked up the stairs to what was considered the private club. It certainly was private and swanky looking, and I suddenly felt very underdressed. A guard at the door held a clipboard, a sight straight out of a movie. On the inside, I cringed. What if I wasn't on the list? I would absolutely die in front of everyone. On the outside, I held my head high and walked up to the guard. He looked me up and down. Name? Harlow Vale? He scanned the list, gazed at me for several beats past uncomfortable, but then he opened the door and let me in. I breathed a sigh of relief. So that was what it felt like to be a celebrity, to be considered exclusive enough to get into a club like this. I stood at the door and took it all in. It wasn't at all what I was expecting. It was decorated like the old speakeasies that were around in the 1920s. That piqued my curiosity. What other forbidden things were going on here? Jazz music filtered through the speakers at a low enough volume that I could hear people's conversations. The place was packed, with several seated in booths, at round tables in the center, and at the bar. I looked around for Ames, but I couldn't see him anywhere. I had his number, but I felt silly about sending him a message so soon. As I moved through the crowd, a weird feeling swarmed in the pit of my stomach. There was something very strange about this party, but I couldn't put my finger on what. It wasn't the kind of club that one would go dancing at and get plastered enough to have sex in a bathroom stall. Not that I would know anything about that. It seemed a lot more adult, for lack of a better word. I glanced at the bar and saw a man biting into the neck of a woman before sucking on it like a vampire. I did a double take, but no, they were just embracing. What's the matter with you, Harlow? Another glance in their direction proved I'd been imagining things, since now they stood close to each other, laughing. Though their chemistry was off the charts, they were clearly not sucking each other's blood. I rolled my eyes at myself. Mom's paranoia was obviously getting to me. I still didn't know what she meant by tonight of all nights. I even searched Google, and the closest thing I could find on the calendar that I should be concerned about was National Popcorn Day, which was yesterday. I'd completely missed it. Sucks, too, because I loved popcorn. When I turned back around, I slammed into a stunning blonde with eyes so light they looked like chips of ice. I held my hands up. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I should really watch where I'm going. The woman backed away and wiped at her black cocktail dress as if I had spilled something on her. She was with a couple of other girls, and they all gave me the same sweeping, judgmental look from my head to my snake tattoo peering up over my shorts to the toes of my chucks. The blonde looked at her friends and said, God, they'll just let anyone in here these days. The other two girls giggled, and the three of them moved around me with a wide berth. One of the girls whispered as she went by me, Did you see what she was wearing? And that snake tattoo? Ew, the third girl said. They all laughed as they went into a side room. Okay, wow, maybe casual wasn't the way to go. I certainly hadn't expected to run into a bunch of mean girls here. I continued to the other side of the club and went down a random hallway. The place was huge, and I had barely seen half of it. There were multiple rooms, and all the doors to the rooms were wide open. Then another growl came from across the hall. It sounded like a wolf or some other wild animal. What the heck was I doing here? Why had Ames invited me? Was it because he knew that I liked dirty shifter books? So he just assumed that I would like to watch other people have sex? I couldn't quite wrap my head around his weird invitation. And where the hell was he, anyway? It occurred to me then that he might be one of the individuals who was writhing with a partner in one of these open rooms. I shook my head. Surely not. I hoped he wasn't expecting me to writhe with him, because that would not be happening. Ames had literally invited me to one big orgy. What was I going to do when I saw him? Laugh or slap him? Maybe the best thing to do was leave before he realized I was here. That way, I could avoid any awkwardness. I barely knew the guy, and I was already watching live porn because of him. As much as I enjoyed a good sex scene in the books I read, sex parties weren't for me. I moved down the hallway and peeked into another room where a couple were going at it with her on top this time. What level of confidence did one have to be able to do it in a room full of people watching and act like you didn't even know they were there? I would be so self-conscious. I was about to look away when I could have sworn that the man bared his teeth at his partner. What the hell? She licked his face, and I wondered if it was some type of sex game to act like animals in bed. Yeah, kinky sex was a thing, but I'd never heard of people baring their teeth at one another. I kept walking down the hallway while shaking my head disbelievingly. Being here was almost laughable. It was the furthest thing from my scene, and I was so at a loss as to why Ames wanted me here. I felt like a fish out of water, and I was dressed as if I belonged at a bookstore, not a sex party. It was definitely time to leave. I made my way to the front of the club, where the couple were once again feeding off each other. It made a lot more sense now when I considered what I had witnessed in the other rooms. I stopped and stared, waiting to see if there was any blood or a mark or something. But vampires? It wasn't possible. Out of nowhere, a hand landed on my shoulder. I jumped and turned to find Ames smiling down at me. "You scared the crap out of me," I said with a breathless, awkward laugh. I glanced back at the bar, and the couple looked like just another couple again. Maybe I really was losing it. "Sorry, I didn't mean to, little rabbit," he said with a kind of smile that suggested he really did mean to. I scoffed. "Yeah, I'm sure you are." Still, I couldn't help my relief at seeing him again. His was the only friendly face here, and that same sharp tug as at the bookstore dragged me one step closer to him. He grinned, this one real and genuine. "I'm really glad you came." "I bet," I said with a sigh. "Are you having a good time?" I looked around the club. "I just don't think that this is really my type of place, Ames. Why did you invite me?" He took a long draw of his drink, the ice in his glass tinkling, and then licked his lips. "This is the kind of party we have every week. Sometimes twice. I thought you would have a good time." People are openly having sex in the back rooms. You might be surprised to find out that I've never been to a place like this before. A look of amusement crossed his face. "I thought you liked sex." My face burned. I knew he was trying to get a rise out of me. "I do. I like reading about it in the privacy of my own bedroom. I don't even watch porn. Never mind watch people have sex right in front of me, along with 20 others." "You're not a prude, are you?" he asked, tilting his head. I laughed. "Don't be annoying, Ames. I'm afraid I'm severely underdressed, too. You could have given me a heads up on the dress code." "Oh, I wouldn't want to annoy you," he said with a chuckle. "And you look great." "Really? I feel like I should have dressed up more," I said as I motioned to his apparel. He was dressed in a blue button-down shirt and black form-fitting pants with a jacket to match. Like at the bookstore, he looked pretty incredible. Lickable, even. "I think you look great," he said again, warmly. "Well, thank you. Can I get you a drink?" "Sure." "What would you like?" "Surprise me." "Careful what you wish for," he said with a devious smile that curled my toes. "Don't go anywhere." He left me standing there and approached the bar where he started chatting up the couple who couldn't seem to stop necking. I turned from them and surveyed the room. As I was scanning the crowd, my gaze landed on the group of mean girls on a set of black, curved sofas. "Her name is Sloane." My mouth dropped open as a tall, blonde, and clearly photoshopped man approached me. He looked like he belonged on the cover of a romance novel. Every single part of him was perfect. His eyes were gray, his teeth were pearly white, and his jaw and cheekbones were sharp enough to cut my resolve to leave this sex party by more than half. He was a walking stereotype, and he was talking to me. He grinned as he stepped closer. "And she's an absolute bitch." Chapter 4. Hello. I managed, overwhelmed by yet another gorgeous man. Where were they all coming from, and why was this one talking to me? He jerked his chin toward the girls on the black sofas. I wouldn't go anywhere near Sloane if I were you. She's not the most welcoming person here. I laughed. Unfortunately, I learned that the hard way. His eyebrows rose. She already took a bite out of you, did she? Weird choice of words. I nodded. A mouthful. Sorry about that. I wish I would have seen you sooner. I would have shown you around. I tried to picture getting a personal escort through all the sex rooms, and my blush crawled to the tips of my ears. He tilted his head at me. I'm Stride, by the way. Oh, I'm Harlow. What an unusual name. I blinked at him. Your name is Stride. He laughed. Touché. It's nice to meet you, Harlow. Same here. His gray eyes searched my face and hair. You're beautiful, Harlow. Has anyone ever told you that before? I swallowed hard. And you're supremely confident, Stride. Has anyone ever told you that? Do you talk to all the ladies like this? He chuckled. Sometimes, but that doesn't mean it's any less true. I smiled. Well, thanks. My blush deepened, if that were possible. I felt like I was suddenly in a bubble, just Stride in me. It was a little dizzying. I'd never experienced anything like it before today. 2 hot guys chatting me up? I mean, then bam! Twice? First Ames and now Stride. Both treating me like I was the center of the universe. His gaze flicked around the room before returning to me. So, Harlow, what on earth are you doing in a place like this? I could ask you the same thing. Hey, it's my kind of place, and most importantly, it's my kind of people. Really? I cringed a little on the inside. I don't think that I could say the same, but I don't mind new experiences. He nodded. Thank God for that. Who did you come with? What makes you think I came with anyone? You wouldn't have been able to get in on your own. Believe it or not, we don't just let anyone in. He motioned around the room. We are a very exclusive club, and this is a very exclusive party. Invite only. Yes, it's quite the party. I can't say that I've ever been to anything like it. I'm glad to hear that. It is my party, after all, he said, watching me closely. My eyes widened. Your party? You throw these kinds of parties? Of course it's mine, sweet Harlow. I throw the best parties. Only someone like me could throw something like this. If it was meant as a brag, he didn't make it sound like one. It was impressive, even with the sex stuff left out of it. Just like when I first arrived, I couldn't help but compare it to the clubs and college parties I'd seen on TV and in movies. Sure, that stuff might have been exaggerated, but I couldn't believe a normal night at the club for a person my age looked anything like this. Why such an extravagant party? I asked. I mean, you could have just thrown a kegger. He laughed. Yes, I guess I could have, but this is a special party for a special occasion. Oh, what occasion is that? Your birthday? I'm getting married. My jaw hit the ground, and I quickly tried to pick it up. Stride was the last person I would expect to be getting married, and that had nothing to do with how little I knew about him. He was not giving off taken vibes. In fact, he seemed like a player looking to score. Really? Where is she? He leaned in. Would you like to dance? I blinked, confused. What? Come on, let's dance. He grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the dance floor. I dug in the heels of my Chucks into the floor, but I was nothing but a feather against his strength. No, wait, I'm here with someone else. Whatever happened to Ames and my drink? I probably should have stuck closer to him. I'm sure he won't mind. He hauled me closer, putting his hands on my waist. I instantly tried to break free. It's fine, he said, dragging me back and settling my arms around his neck. What was with this guy? I ground my teeth together, panic fusing my feet to the floor. I should have never come. I should just go, right now. As if sensing my thoughts, he pulled me even closer so that I breathed in his too spicy smell. I have to go, I told him. Cool. After this song. He nodded as though my obvious discomfort meant nothing. My heart jackhammered. I shouldn't be dancing with a guy who's about to be married anyway. What if his fiancée were here and we got into a catfight? I definitely was not a catfight type of girl. I wasn't a dance with me or else kind of girl either. Stride brought one of his hands to my face and leaned in closer, and I gasped as his lips touched mine. Yeah, nope. I pulled away, royally pissed, and slammed down my shoe on top of his foot as hard as I could. He didn't even flinch. Why the hell would you kiss me if you're getting married? I demanded. He shrugged, so casually like this was all a big joke to him. You're not supposed to be here, Harlow. But now that you are, I'm going to take advantage of the moment. What are you talking about? I snapped. I was invited, so of course I'm supposed to be here. And you won't be taking advantage of shit. You don't know anything about me. The fuck are you doing, Stride? We both turned to see Ames standing there with my drink in his hand. I flushed with embarrassment, feeling like I was doing something wrong even though I knew I wasn't. I hadn't been the one to initiate the kiss, but now that it happened, I was mortified. Ames, Stride offered with an easy grin. I just met this amazing girl. I looked to Stride in surprise. Yeah, I can see that, Ames said with a definite note of irritation. I told you Harlow was coming tonight. She's the girl I was telling you about, but I'm sure you already knew that. I looked from one man to the other, thick tension roiling between them. I'm sorry, Ames, I blurted. He only glanced at me, but then went back to ripping into Stride. What the fuck were you thinking? Calm down, Ames, Stride said, smoothing his suit jacket. I was just playing around. You don't have to take everything so seriously. Just then, another man approached. He was older than Stride and Ames, but I couldn't really tell by how much. His blonde, slicked back hair still looked wet. In his tux, he looked kind of like James Bond, someone important, dressed as if he belonged in a casino and not at a celebratory orgy. His hard, unfriendly eyes flicked to Stride. What's going on? Nothing, Stride said, still looking at Ames. I'm just meeting the new girl. He gazed at me and smiled, but I didn't smile back. There was some sort of power play going on, and I didn't want any part of it. The James Bond look-alike put all of his attention on me, studying me like I was small enough to fit under a magnifying glass. He looked me up and down with a sneer, making me feel both uncomfortable and self-conscious at once. Thanks for that, dick. He turned back to Stride and grabbed his arm, pulling him away. Let's go. Unsure of what had just happened, I turned to Ames, who was watching the other two men leave. The older man was whispering something into Stride's ear, and he didn't look happy at all. Ames looked caught off guard, his body stiff as he slowly turned back to me. Are you okay? I nodded, but I didn't think I was. Neither was Ames. His whole demeanor had changed. His smile had vanished, and he wasn't looking at me the same way he had before. The sparkle in his bright blue eyes was gone. A waitress came by, and he handed her the full glasses before offering me the one I was supposed to drink. then jammed his hands into his pockets. He glanced over at the strange man in stride again, who were heading toward a stage. Was it his nerves that suddenly made him so standoffish? He was like a completely different guy from the smooth, confident rogue at the bookstore who'd invited me. Ames, what's going on? I couldn't read his expression. He looked almost tortured, and I couldn't figure out why. What had transpired between the men that I didn't understand? He didn't answer. I'm going home, I told him, turning to leave. But two burly men were sliding a thick slab of wood across the exit doors. Ames shook his head, his expression grim. I'm not sure you're going to be able to do that, Harlow.